Hello, everybody, and welcome back to A Call from the Stars, A Call to Arms, Chapter 25. Point of View: Captain Sin, Terran Military, 114th Drop Soldiers. Oh, this jump is gonna seriously suck. As we're getting in the pods, everything's shaking. And I mean everything. We got railguns firing, missiles, torpedoes, point defense cannons are going crazy. And immediately I'm having to yell, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, go, faster, 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 load up, load up, load up. Because that Corvette's going to be leaving with or without us. And I'd prefer to be actually in my pod when this thing disconnects. It is not a fun time, trust me, if you are not in your pod and that Corvette disconnects from the main ship. If anything, you're probably going to break a few bones. If nothing else, you're going to be damaging your armor. We got into our pods just about in time. We had maybe 15 seconds before the Corvette disconnected. Pretty much as soon as we gave ready up, we could hear clamps disengaging, and off we went. As soon as we rotated, they immediately went full flank speed towards the planet. It really sucks that we can't see, but seeing the digital readout on my HUD was just insane. They must have covered half the planet with their ships, and our Corvettes were playing dodge the particle beam as they're flying through. I'll give this for our pilots. They may be crazy sons of bitches, but they really know what they're doing. Unfortunately, we did feel our ship get hit about halfway down. Oh boy, oh boy. You know it's bad when even through your pod you can hear the alarm sounding inside the ship. At that point, we could feel the ship begin to enter the atmosphere, and we found out really quick what we got hit by. They started saying abandoned ship, abandoned ship. They started using railguns. Oh crap. If these guys got smart and started using projectiles, this is going to get a whole lot meaner than we thought. As the doors opened and we were dropped out of the ship, we could actually see on the HUD our escape pods from the same Corvette ejecting out the sides. They were in no hurry to get back in their ship. And of course, as soon as I saw the icon for our Corvette disappear off my HUD, I knew exactly what happened. We just made it out in time. On the way down, we just kept getting shaking. All the way down. It just was back and forth. We had projectiles go. We could hear lasers trying to burn through the pod's armor. We could hear the flyby of missiles and fighter aircraft, and of course the occasional pop, pop, pop of our own weapons being bounced off the side. Not so fun when it was a blue-on-blue contact, but down we went. Down we flew, and it's a long way down. It's a rather large planet. It's a little bit bigger than ours. Thankfully, the gravity isn't quite as heavy, but still, it's a long way down in that pod when you can't see anything, and seconds feel like hours. Flying down, all you can feel is the basic weightlessness as the pod is going down at the same speed as you are. It's like skydiving. If you can't see anything, basically hear anything except for things that are trying to kill you as you plummet towards the earth at flank speed. Thankfully, we could hear the brakes pop out to slow us down and guide us in. The extra rockets to make sure we were on course began to fire, and the shifting was enough to basically liquefy my kidneys against the side. At least it felt like it. As I sat there clenched, trying to make sure my liver didn't fall out my asshole, we could feel the second set of brakes come in. And we knew it wasn't going to be long before they broke away and the chutes actually opened. The chutes were the only thing that kept you from actually going splat. If you went splat, you hoped that you rolled, because terminal velocity, I don't care who you are. I don't care what type of dampeners you have. You just go splat and you turn into a stain on the ground. Thankfully, we could feel the chutes kick in, but then we heard something we did not expect. Impacts on the side of the pod that were definitely not human. You can always tell when it's a human impact because it's always a deflect. It's never directly at you. Instead, these were large forced hits on the side. I flipped on the comms, instead prepare for impact, just in time to hear one of my guys scream out in pain as something had come through the pod and pierced right through his abdomen. When we hit the ground, the doors immediately flung open. The door directly in front of me busted up one of the four-legged freaks as it hit him right in the face. I immediately grabbed my weapon and pulled forward just as he was coming up. I say he because honestly I can't tell the difference between male and female, especially in the heat of conflict. As I moved forward, I put my 15 millimeter slug right through his head. Yes, we had updated guns. And it was a good thing too. The sniffs, they got smart. They were starting to wear armor, actual plate armor, big metal pieces in front of their chest and in front of the rest of their torso. There was a little bit of a head covering, but it really wasn't much, honestly, that we could see. But what really made a difference is that at least one of their manipulating arms was carrying a shield. This was just a diagonally cut piece of metal. The metal, we didn't know what type, but we're like, since when did they start using metal? The kicker is we knew, even just at quick glance, why they used it this way. The shape, when moved towards you, was that of basically an arrowhead, slanted back. That wasn't meant to stop bullets, that was meant to deflect things away from them so they could actually get close, and they sure as hell tried. As soon as they saw one of our pods hit, we were just getting rushed from all sides. I had to burn through all my grenades within the first 3 minutes as I kept grabbing them and tossing them in any hole I saw a bunch of them coming in. The plate armor may be nice, but sheer concussive force is enough to really mess these guys up. Not to mention the new grenades were more like a bouncing Betty or a claymore mine. When they blew, they didn't just blow up and out like a normal grenade. They blew ball bearings out like a damn shotgun. This definitely slowed the sniffs down because they really didn't have medics, at least none that we could see. So they would actually leave their wounded on the battlefield. Twisted sons of bitches. What really made things bad is that those projectiles that they were using were actually flying a rod at us. I think they shrunk down the version of our railguns. But what the hell? Unfortunately for us, something like that can pierce armor a whole lot better than just a bullet. You don't understand physics if you don't understand that. When I went to the other side of the pod, I found out one of my guys, what he was screaming about is one of these rods had actually gone through the door and through him and latched him to the side. Unfortunately, he was gone because when the door blew off, it ripped that rod clean back out, and the fucking thing is serrated. Boy, these guys suck. It wasn't just him. Out of the 4 men that came down, myself included, from that pod, 2 were already down within the first 30 seconds. Me and Vasquez, we tried to hold, but Vasquez got taken out fairly quick. Thankfully, as I was thinking, I am so done, firing 2 weapons, one in each hand, just trying like hell to keep the enemy back, the rest of my platoon and company showed up. They made short work of the sniffs, especially when attacking from the side. The sniffs might have been smart enough to actually wear body armor and wear shields this time, but everything was facing the front. From what we could figure, that's because they still insisted on running straight at us and coming at us with those giant bladed arms. I don't know why, it really can't get through our new armor, so it is what it is, and I'm not even going to consider it. However, I did take a couple of entries on that, but thankfully they weren't life-threatening, so we kept going. We continued to our rally point as best we could. Thankfully, my company was able to grab the casualties, the wounded at least, and keep going. We'll come back from the dead later. As we got to our rally point, we realized that the shuttles were coming down. The Navy must have blown a hole in the defenses if the shuttles are coming down, bringing our heavy equipment in. Boy, those giant bipedal walkers were something I really, really, really wanted to see right about now. As I was down 50% on my ammo, I'm out of grenades. All I got left is smoke and a couple of bangers. Ain't gonna do me much good in this situation. I should have loaded up with more. Regardless, as that shuttle came down, we received one hell of a shock. We didn't think the sniffs could come up with something to counteract our giant metal machines, but they did. They weren't very nice, they were very cumbersome, and they walked really slow, but it was still enough to put a hole clean through that dropship. Oh boy, I seen the dropship crew. They must have been freaking out because they immediately went down and basically belly landed their dropship, and those doors were already starting to open before they hit the ground. They wanted their equipment out. And thankfully, our big guys were a lot meaner than theirs. The kicker is, the enemy, I don't know how they figured it out, but those big walkers they had were pretty good shots. They didn't fire very fast, and they didn't hit as hard, but at least when they did hit, they actually hit something of value. Somehow they had figured out that the fusion drive that was on most of our dropships, that's where they aimed. If they hit that, the system locked up to make sure it didn't, well, blow up. At that point, we saw another dropship coming down that was able to actually land, and thankfully, this one had exactly what we wanted to see on it. Right on the doors, not on a piece of white, but just on the doors as they opened, was that metal cross. Immediately, I ordered everyone to grab the wounded and get them back as soon as possible. And I'll tell you what, even though we were holding the rally point and we had those big machines covering our asses, it was still absolutely beautiful to see the battlefield angel coming towards us. Here comes Doc, and here comes about 20 other Docs as they start grabbing our wounded and dragging them back. I let them know that we have fallen in one area. Maybe they can do something, maybe they can't. I don't know. I'm not a surgeon. All I know is these suits got a lot of extras to them. At that point, we realized that the enemy had saw this dropship land, and for some reason they were focusing on us. You don't go after our wounded. You don't go after Doc. You want to sign the most certain death warrant in the entire universe? You fire at Doc, and that's exactly what they did. I saw one of our Docs get clipped in the shoulder as she went flying across the room. And oh hell, I didn't even have to say anything. I just heard every single one of my guys screaming, "You bastard! You motherless fucker!" and a few other items which are, well, they don't translate well, but they were in a different language. And oh dear Lord, out of their whole positions, they jumped out and just started raining holy hell on the enemy. It got so bad that when they ran out of ammo, I saw them start using their weapons as clubs. Even with the new armor we have helping out our muscles, it wasn't enough to truly take them on one by one, or one on one. However, it didn't stop our guys from trying. At that point, I started calling for any reinforcement I could, and thankfully we got it. As soon as the medical dropship lifted off, there was another one coming in to take its place. Again, these pilots are nuts. The amount of ground-to-air fire was absolutely insane. That thing was covered in pock marks, and it was even opened up on one side right next to the cockpit that I was amazed they even survived it. Out came our resupply, and out came my reinforcements. Even though Alpha Bravo had already landed, here came Charlie Company, and what a sight for sore eyes they were. They came in, grabbed our wounded, threw them inside, and then immediately started throwing ammo towards us, and we continued to fight. That was about the point I saw two of my men dragging casualties back as the casualties were still shooting at the enemy. If they weren't shooting, they were screaming, swearing, spitting, and flipping them off. But you know what? That's infantry. We are defiance. We are rage. We are hate. And the hate came later. It was about 6 hours later that we were able to hold on to our rally point and clear the LZ so that more ships could come down. Thankfully, the rest of the brigade had made it planetside and were rallying around this one area. Still, we had the occasional sniff show up, but what we found out, even though this was the enemy's homeworld, they kept a lot of prisoners. But the prisoners were not for what you think. These prisoners were more of a status symbol. These prisoners were kept as um, not quite housemaids, but more for house companions. We found many of them almost torn asunder from the sniffs doing what they did for pleasure with these. Oh God, you had some whose abdomens were ripped apart, some who were arms and legs missing. It wasn't just lizards either. It was the PZ. It was other aliens too. There was some sort of crab-looking thing. We couldn't figure out what the hell it was. We didn't know if it was sentient or not until it cowered and started saying something our translators couldn't figure out. At that point, it was this was rescue. This was search and rescue. This wasn't just a battle. But then we saw something that truly, truly pissed us off. As it turned out, the young sniffs, after they hatch, only take a short time before they are hitting their version of puberty. They had decided to throw some of these captives to them, and they were quite literally assaulted to death. When we walked in, not only could we see some of them still being assaulted, even though the battle was raging, but they were even going after corpses. What the fuck? I gave the order, and I do not regret it at all. I looked at my men, and I said, kill them all. And they did. With righteous fury, they went down and just started tearing these young sniffs apart. I know we say we don't kill kids, but holy jumping Jesus, what the hell was I seeing? Some of them didn't even stop. They looked at us and smiled. Well, their version of it, thinking, hey, you want to join us? I remember pulling my pistol, my 50 caliber. I was never one for Desert Eagles, but I insisted on carrying this thing. I simply walked up to one of these things as it just kind of looked at me like, what? And I blew his fucking head off. That's nothing compared to what my men were doing. They tried to keep the captives alive. They kept screaming for medics. Unfortunately, the medics were busy. We tried to get as many as we could. I told them to grab whoever they could save and get them the hell back to the shuttle now. I knew I'd get in trouble for this later, taking my men off the line, but I didn't care. There's just things you don't do, no matter how bad the fight is. And this was one of them. After we returned the casualties, I still remember briefing with my platoon leaders the next part of the mission, and at least 4 of our men showed up. I said, sir, we have something for you. And he literally dropped a satchel full of grenades and ammo in front of me. Sir, I think you're going to need some of this too. Surprisingly, he had realized I was almost out of ammo. But come on, if a commander is actually firing, something is seriously wrong. And something was wrong. We didn't realize that the sniffs had been rallying, and they're coming in hot. They had not only themselves, their walking machines, but they also had figured out that artillery from before and had been bringing it up to snuff. It was no longer something to play with. This was dangerous. And pretty soon, the only thing I heard was incoming right before the blast waves began to hit. We couldn't stay where we were. Static defenses are the graveyards of armies now. Now, now we have to move. Now we have to take the fight to them, and now it is back to a war of movement. As we began to move forward, I could still see some of the men grabbing young prisoners, young slaves that were being, I guess you could say, trained for their new position. In one case, I will never forget. It was one of my men, one of the hardest motherfuckers I've known in my life. He had a freshly born lizard in one arm. He had a young PZ, I couldn't tell male or female, but the damn thing couldn't have been more than 2 years old, in the other arm. And he is running through a hail of projectile fire. He's got at least one rod stuck in one of his kidneys, and he's still running back to the ship to protect these young ones. The true duality of humans I saw there. As right behind him, I saw one of my guys jump on one of these sniffs, shove his weapon right down the damn thing's throat, and actually fire straight down his gullet, and the round went all the way through the sniff into the ground as its guts exploded, as he screamed in sheer rage. I didn't have time to enjoy the sight. I simply got on the comms and gave one command. Forward!